Speaking of mining and mining centres, let's head over to the west and talk about Western Australia, mainly Perth. What's your view on the Perth market, Bryce?
Yeah, my hometown, I think, there still is that fly-in, fly-out workforce that exists there. So there's still opportunities, but as a general market in terms of sentiment, I think it's changed. I think you could group Perth, you can group Canberra, and you can sort of group Darwin all together in terms of where they are in the cycles, probably at the peak and coming off the other end. So you need to be careful. But again, you can see opportunities in those three markets. But in terms of investor sentiment and interstate sentiment into those markets, it's definitely on the downward trend. Macro
view, Perth steady, flat. So pace of growth, well, actually slow or no growth because of that whole sentiment story and job security that's going to occur in that market. So, yep, like any market, still find opportunities. If you're playing in the Perth market, you're probably maybe looking for land opportunities where you can add value, do some reno stuff. But in general, we're not going to see that general uplift in land value, and we're not going to see that capital growth come through. Some of the mining centres and lifestyle centres, probably a wait and see attitude for that. I mean, you are buying counter-cyclical, but I still think there's more to come off, and I'd be looking at those markets probably 2016, 2017 for some bargain basement buys, as opposed to going in there now, because the yields are still okay, but I just can't see any growth for the moment.
Yeah, if you don't want to slip, don't go to slippery spots. Hey, so you don't necessarily.
There's a new one. That's a beauty.
You don't want to go into these mining towns, given the sentiment that exists there.
Exactly. Let's jump into Tassie and have a look at the Tasmania market. Look, population growth near non-existent. I think there's so small amount of population growth, job opportunities, brain drain of people, great tourism location, lovely place to visit, but just not giving me any confidence around growth. So even though you want yield, you want to get a bit of growth in behind that, I can't see that growth for the time being. So I'm a steer clear of the Tassie market.
Yeah, I think again, if you look at Tasmania, or even if you look at Adelaide, they've got a similar situation where their entry level is quite low, which means the yields are quite attractive. But it really comes down to where can you get the good yields and the upside in terms of capital growth. And so if people live in those cities and they see an opportunity there, I think there is a good yield play.
Oh, yeah.
But for, I guess in terms of a national view, for people who don't live in those cities, there's probably better opportunity in Brisbane. And when you talk about affordability, because that's what we're talking about what it costs to buy in and what yield we get, just because Melbourne and Sydney have median house prices, Sydney over 700,000, Melbourne hovering around that sort of 650 range, what you're actually talking about there is then we go and see a $200,000 house and we think, wow, that's affordable. But then we also look at the average household incomes that are coming in there, and it's like, well, it's all relative. Yeah. So let's move on to South Australia. South Australia and Adelaide more specifically. What we are seeing is we've seen some infrastructure developments, and we've seen Adelaide get a bit of confidence back about itself with the Adelaide Oval redevelopment, the new convention centre, and a lot of new medical facilities and upgrades along the Northern Terrace there. So it's an interesting play, because I think Adelaide is now starting the city's starting to get a bit of an identity, and people are going to be attracted to that. Friday night, Thursday night football, the biggest game in town. That is the positives. The negatives are the manufacturing and mining sentiment and the brain drain that comes out of that to go to our major cities. Yeah, because we think the number one driver for capital growth is income growth, and if you've got a city that largely has people looking to go to other sort of states to earn better money opportunities, that's always going to have a glass ceiling effect on the prices, and I think that's evidenced by the fact that their median price is so low compared to the rest of the country. But mate, I've been to Adelaide, I've been to Hobart many times with the show. It's a fantastic place to be, but if you're going to consider whether they're the places to invest, I'd think you'd be pretty cautious.
Yeah, and I think Adelaide better than Tasmania. I actually think Adelaide, you could, if we really needed to, I think we could go in there and buy a bit of stock for our clients because there is some upside. But again, when I weigh it up with other opportunities, which is obviously why we get paid to do what we do, I'd probably be buying elsewhere.
Because if you think about being statistically safe, South Australia has about 8% of Australia's population, and Tasmania has 1%. So between the two states, they don't even make up 1/10 of our population. So that's something that really needs to be considered.
It does. Let's get into the territories. Oh, look, South Australia country, no, nothing at the moment. I mean, Olympic dams, keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on some oil prospecting that's going on out in that sort of Cooper Pedy region, but that's very speculative. So we'd want a lot more confidence score around that before we actually took our clients into those markets. So the territories, we'll start.